Most people can easily locate the island of Ireland on a world map, that emerald stretch of land in the North Atlantic. But far fewer can explain why this single island is divided into two nations. The Republic of Ireland, an independent country, covers most of the island, while the northeastern corner forms Northern Ireland, which remains part of the United Kingdom. This division, and the 310-mile border that separates the two, is not some ancient frontier. It's a modern wound, born just over a century ago during the partition of Ireland. Yet the roots of this division reach back thousands of years, buried in layers of invasion, faith, and resistance. For most of its history, Ireland has been shaped by outsiders and upheaval, by wars, migration, and shifting empires. Each era left its scars upon the land and its people. But how did these long and tangled events come to divide one island into two nations? And what forces, after centuries of conflict, would later drive the Irish toward reconciliation and fragile peace? To answer that, we must journey deep into Ireland's past, to its earliest settlers, its mythic tribes, and the first seeds of a civilization that would one day change the fate of Europe itself. Long before castles, kings, or Christianity, Ireland was a wild, mist-covered land of forests and rivers, a place that seemed untouched by time. Then came a people who would forever shape its destiny. Arriving around 500 BCE, these Indo-European tribes brought with them not just weapons and craftsmanship, but a culture of myth, music, and intricate oral traditions. The Celts didn't merely settle Ireland, they became Ireland. Their language, beliefs, and customs wove into the land's very soul. The island transformed into a tapestry of tuatha, or small kingdoms, each ruled by a chieftain and bound by loyalty, honor, and kinship. This new society, known as Gaelic Ireland, wasn't unified by borders or central power. Instead, it thrived through shared culture and language. Old Irish, the ancestor of Gaelic still spoken today. They worshipped gods tied to nature, of rivers, fertility, and war, and believed the world of spirits coexisted with their own. Their druids, wise keepers of knowledge, guided them through rituals and law. The Celtic art of storytelling, filled with heroes like Cu Chulainn and Queen Medb, preserved not just myth, but identity. By the dawn of the first millennium, Ireland was distinct from the rest of Europe, untouched by Roman conquest, unbound by empire. It was a world ruled by tradition and legend, where clans and kings rose and fell beneath sacred hills. Yet, this golden age of Gaelic culture would soon face its first great challenge, one that came from across the sea. By the early 5th century, the winds of change began to sweep across Ireland's green hills. Traders and travelers from Roman Britain carried with them whispers of a new faith, Christianity. But it wasn't until the arrival of one man that this new belief would truly take root. His name was Patrick, now remembered as Saint Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. Born in Roman Britain, Patrick was captured by Irish raiders as a young boy and enslaved for years, tending flocks in the countryside. In captivity, he found faith. When he escaped and returned home, a vision called him back to the very island where he had once been a slave. Around 432 CE, Patrick returned to Ireland, not as a prisoner, but as a missionary. His approach was revolutionary. Instead of condemning Celtic traditions, Patrick blended them with Christian beliefs. Sacred wells, ancient festivals, and sun symbols found new meaning under the cross. Slowly, Ireland transformed, not by sword, but by faith and persuasion. By the 6th century, Ireland had become a beacon of Christian scholarship. Monasteries like Clonmacnoise, Glendalough, and Armagh flourished. Centers not just of prayer, but of art, science, and learning. Monks meticulously preserved ancient manuscripts, creating the Book of Kells, one of history's greatest artistic treasures. In an age when much of Europe was descending into darkness after Rome's fall, Ireland stood as a light of knowledge, earning the title, the land of saints and scholars. This peace and prosperity wouldn't last forever. From the misty northern seas, new invaders were coming, fierce warriors who would test Ireland's strength like never before. In the late 8th century, Ireland's quiet monastic life was shattered by the thunder of longships cutting through misty seas. The Vikings, fierce Norse seafarers from Scandinavia, had arrived. Their first raids were swift and brutal. Monasteries like Lambay Island and Clonmacnoise, once centers of peace and wisdom, became targets of plunder and fire. The invaders came for gold, silver, and slaves, but over time, they came for something more. By the 9th century, the Vikings began to settle. They built fortified coastal towns that would become the roots of modern cities: Dublin, Wexford, Waterford, Cork, and Limerick. What began as invasion slowly transformed into integration. Norse traders brought new connections to Europe, while Irish chieftains forged uneasy alliances with them for power and trade. This period of chaos forced the fragmented Irish clans to evolve. Ambitious kings rose to defend their lands and claim authority over others. One such ruler, Brian Boru of Munster, emerged as a unifying force. By the dawn of the 11th century, he broke the power of rival clans and even the Viking lords, proclaiming himself High King of Ireland. His reign marked the brief vision of a united Ireland, a nation that stood tall against both foreign and domestic strife. But unity came at a cost. In 1014, the famous Battle of Clontarf saw Brian Boru's forces defeat the Viking alliance, yet the king himself fell in victory. His death ended the dream of lasting unity, plunging Ireland once again into a web of rival kingdoms. Still, the Norse left an indelible mark in trade, culture, and the birth of Ireland's first true cities. And as the centuries turned, a new, far greater threat loomed, one that would forever alter the fate of the Emerald Isle. By the mid-12th century, Ireland was a land divided, ruled by countless rival kings and chieftains, each vying for power. While Gaelic culture thrived, this fragmentation left the island vulnerable, and in 1169, opportunity arrived from across the Irish Sea. The Normans, descendants of Vikings who had settled in France and conquered England a century earlier, now set their sights on Ireland. It began with a plea for help. Dermot MacMurrough, the exiled king of Leinster, sought assistance from the Norman lords to reclaim his throne. In exchange, he offered land and allegiance. Answering his call was Richard de Clare, known as Strongbow. With his heavily armed knights and disciplined soldiers, Strongbow landed in Ireland, and everything changed. Their campaign was swift and devastating. Norman castles rose from the earth, built of stone instead of timber, symbols of domination and permanence. Their military prowess and organization easily overwhelmed the loosely united Irish clans. By 1171, King Henry II of England arrived himself, claiming Ireland as part of his realm. Marking the beginning of English rule that would last for centuries, the Normans brought new systems of governance, architecture, and law. Yet, as generations passed, something remarkable happened. Many Norman settlers adopted Irish language and customs, marrying into local clans and blending into the Gaelic world. The saying emerged, more Irish than the Irish themselves. Still, beneath this uneasy coexistence, English power grew steadily stronger. And as London's influence expanded, Ireland's sovereignty began to fade into shadow, setting the stage for centuries of conflict, rebellion, and resilience that would define its story. By the 16th century, Ireland was still a land of divided loyalties, part Gaelic, part Norman, and only loosely tied to the English crown. But that fragile balance was about to collapse under the weight of Tudor ambition. Across the Irish Sea, King Henry VIII had broken from the Catholic Church and declared himself the head of the new Church of England. This seismic shift in religion and power rippled outward, reaching Ireland with violent consequences. Determined to bring Ireland under full English control, the Tudors launched a campaign that was both military and cultural. They sought to replace Irish laws, language, and faith with those of England. Resistance flared across the island as native lords refused to submit. The result was decades of bloody rebellion and suppression. The once independent Gaelic order crumbled. The Desmond Rebellions, and later the 9 Years' War, led by the defiant Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, were fought with courage but ended in tragedy. The final blow came in 1603, when O'Neill surrendered to the English crown. Ireland's age-old clan system, the very backbone of Gaelic civilization, was shattered. What followed was one of Ireland's darkest turning points, the flight of the Earls in 1607, when Ireland's last great Gaelic nobles fled into exile. Their departure marked the symbolic end of a free, native Ireland. With the Gaelic order broken, England's grip tightened. The land was seized, the culture suppressed, and the people forced to adapt or perish. Yet beneath the surface, Ireland's ancient spirit endured, waiting for its chance to rise again. The early 17th century marked a new chapter in Ireland's story, one not of conquest by sword, but of colonization by design. Following the flight of the Earls, Vast tracts of confiscated land in Ulster, Munster, and Leinster were handed over to English and Scottish settlers loyal to the Crown. This massive resettlement, known as the Plantations of Ireland, reshaped the country's political, cultural, and religious landscape forever. The goal was simple yet devastating: to replace the native Irish Catholic elite with a loyal Protestant class that would secure English control. Towns expanded, fortresses rose, and new laws were imposed to marginalize those who clung to the old faith. For native Irish farmers, this meant eviction, poverty, and displacement from the lands their ancestors had held for centuries. Nowhere was this transformation more profound than in Ulster, where Scottish Presbyterians and English Protestants created a new society within the island. The divide between Protestant and Catholic, once a matter of faith, became the foundation of social and political power, a fracture that would echo through centuries. By the mid-1600s, tensions boiled into open conflict. Ireland became a battleground for control between royalists, republicans, and native Irish forces. The arrival of Oliver Cromwell in 1649 unleashed a campaign of unparalleled brutality, massacres, famine, and land confiscations that left deep scars on the Irish memory. By the century's end, Protestant rule was absolute. The Protestant ascendancy dominated Irish politics, economy, and culture. The Irish majority lived under harsh penal laws, denied land, education, and rights. Yet even under oppression, the Irish spirit refused to die. In music, in secret schools, and in whispered prayers, a sense of nationhood endured, quiet but unbroken. By the 19th century, Ireland had become a nation bound by hardship. The majority of its people lived in rural poverty, dependent almost entirely on one crop, the potato. It was the food of survival, sustaining millions who toiled on lands they did not own. Beneath the green beauty of the countryside lay a fragile system of exploitation. Irish Catholics, working as tenant farmers for wealthy English landlords. Then, in 1845, disaster struck. A mysterious blight swept across Europe, and Ireland's potato crops withered in the fields. What began as a single bad harvest soon turned into years of unrelenting famine. Between 1845 and 1852, over 1 million people died from starvation and disease. Another 2 million fled, packed onto coffin ships bound for America, Canada, and Australia. The famine wasn't just a natural tragedy, it was a political and human catastrophe. British authorities, driven by rigid economic policies, failed to act decisively. Food continued to be exported from Ireland while its people starved. Entire villages vanished, and a culture built on community and land was torn apart. The Great Famine changed Ireland forever. It decimated the population, deepened the hatred toward British rule, and scattered the Irish across the world, creating a global diaspora that carried their songs, sorrow, and spirit to distant shores. Yet even amid despair, Ireland's heart endured. From the ashes of hunger rose a renewed call for justice and self-determination. The seeds of rebellion had been sown once again, this time not by kings or chieftains, but by the will of the people. By the late 19th century, the Irish people had endured centuries of loss, their land, their freedom, their language. Yet out of this pain grew a fierce determination to reclaim their destiny. Across the island, a new movement began to stir, one rooted not in rebellion alone, but in identity, culture, and hope. The Gaelic revival rekindled pride in Ireland's heritage, language, and traditions. Writers, poets, and thinkers like W.B. Yeats and Douglas Hyde reminded the Irish that their nation was more than a colony. It was a civilization with its own soul. Meanwhile, political leaders like Charles Stewart Parnell and John Redmond pushed for home rule, seeking peaceful self-government within the British Empire. But as the decades passed, frustration grew. When World War I erupted in 1914, many Irishmen fought for Britain, believing freedom would follow their loyalty. It did not. And so, in 1916, a small band of patriots took a stand in Dublin, the Easter Rising. Though the rebellion was crushed and its leaders executed, their sacrifice ignited a fire that could no longer be extinguished. By 1919, the Irish people had risen again, this time in the War of Independence, led by the IRA and the political movement Sinn Féin under Eamon de Valera. Guerrilla warfare and political defiance forced Britain to the table. In 1921, the Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed, granting independence to most of Ireland as the Irish Free State. But freedom came with heartbreak. 6 northern counties remained under British rule, creating Northern Ireland, a division that would haunt the island for generations. Still, for the first time in nearly 800 years, the Irish flag flew over a sovereign land. The dream of countless generations finally realized. The dawn of independence in the 20th century brought both hope and heartbreak. While the Irish Free State emerged as a sovereign nation, the partition of the island left deep wounds. The 6 counties of Northern Ireland remained under British rule, and almost immediately, tensions between the Catholic nationalist and Protestant unionist communities began to define the region's future. In the south, Ireland began to forge its own path. Under leaders like Eamon de Valera, it became a republic in all but name. And in 1949, it officially declared itself the Republic of Ireland, fully free from British rule. The nation faced economic hardship and emigration in its early decades, but the Irish spirit of perseverance endured. Slowly, through education, culture, and industry, Ireland began to rebuild itself, transforming from a rural economy into a modern European state. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland descended into turmoil. From the late 1960s, a period known as the Troubles erupted. 3 decades of violence, riots, and bombings between paramilitary groups and security forces. Yet even through tragedy, voices of peace refused to be silenced. In 1998, the Good Friday Agreement brought an end to the conflict, establishing a fragile but lasting peace. It allowed both parts of Ireland to cooperate while recognizing their shared heritage and future. Since then, Ireland has emerged as one of Europe's most dynamic nations, a symbol of resilience, creativity, and cultural pride. Today, Ireland stands as a bridge between past and present, its scars a reminder of struggle, its spirit a testament to survival. From ancient druids and Celtic warriors to poets, rebels, and dreamers, Ireland's story is one of endless rebirth, a land that has fallen and risen more times than history can count. And through it all, the Emerald Isle remains what it has always been, a land of faith, fire, and unbreakable soul.